Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. Remember when they told us that Aquaman should move? No way could it compete with Mary Poppins Returns or Bumblebee. It's going to flop. It's only going to make 550. It's going to make less than Justice League. Do you remember that? Do you remember how they were predicting failure for Aquaman? They wasn't predictions. They wanted Aquaman to fail, and it didn't. Because right now, not only has Aquaman cleared $1 billion, it has beaten Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight global box office. Who saw that coming? No one. Yes, I concede there's more screens these days. There's more IMAX screens. Doesn't matter. It's a great achievement. People love Aquaman. People wanted to go and see Aquaman. Now, let's be clear here. I don't think anyone's suggesting that Aquaman's a better film than The Dark Knight. But still, what a great achievement for James Wan and Walter Hamada. You know, as I say, this is Walter Hamada's first movie with his name as executive producer, and it's produced results. I want you to understand, not to underestimate the decisions that Warner Brothers have made, the changes that Warner Brothers have made. You know, when I look at Lucasfilm, who have changed nothing since The Last Jedi and have had a flop since then and have done nothing and just stood their ground, and basically Disney as a company just saying, well, we just had too many films on and that's what the problem's been. Lies. But Warner Brothers didn't publicly come out and say, you know, we've made mistakes. But what they did is they did it in a silent way by replacing people, by readjusting people within the company. And it's worked. And bringing in Walter Hamada, of the leader of DC Films, not just the DCEU, but DC Films in general, to create a black label umbrella for things like the Joker movie, a very clever move. And he went in there, worked with his friend James Wan, and they've done something very special. They made the changes they needed to make. When you've got, you know, an empire destroys itself from within. Now, this is a great franchise. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League to a point. I mean, obviously, I can't protect that film, but you know what I mean. It's a great franchise, but it was a successful franchise. You know, these films have made money. There's no question about that. And as I've said before, the first 6 movies in the DCU's history made more money and has had more interest within it than the MCU's first 5-6 movies. Yeah, obviously Avengers was when it all started for them, and they did really well. But ultimately, when you look at the early MCU films, there was not as much interest in them. And in fact, the diehard fans didn't like the early films. I think people thought Iron Man was okay. A lot of complaints about Thor from Marvel fans. I know Marvel fans, so I know what they like and don't like. Captain America, First Avenger, a lot of people didn't like that film. Now, I don't know the Captain America comics. I actually quite like that film. But it's interesting, Marvel fans don't. So there were complaints. But the thing is, CBMs weren't under pressure back then. They weren't fashionable. It was only the popularity, the explosion of what happened with Avengers that made CBMs so massive. So, you know, Feige and his team weren't under much pressure back then. It was only once Avengers became successful that everyone started taking notice. Wow, look at the reaction everyone's got for a CBM. So I think obviously, and the DCEU has been under intense scrutiny since Man of Steel, because you start with a Superman film. Superman is a massive character. When you do a Superman film, everyone takes notice. Everyone wants to give you a critique. Everyone wants to tell you how Superman should be. So it's a very challenging exercise. And I think what Zack Snyder, David S. Goyer, and Christopher Nolan did was, rather than try and create the best version of Superman, they created a real-world Superman. Now, there's a part of me that thinks, do we need to see how the real world would react to Superman? Well, I don't think we needed to see it, but I think it's different, isn't it? It's different, and it's a different way of doing it. Now, I enjoy Man of Steel. I love it. It's one of my favourite CBMs ever. And I've said it before. It's not the way I would have gone at things. And Batman v Superman, I love that film. It's not the way I would have done a Batman v Superman film, because in a way it's suicidal, it's gutsy, and it's art house, isn't it? Which I said yesterday. But Aquaman's success is unprecedented, and really it's difficult to kind of pin down why Aquaman has been this successful, because it's not just been successful, it's been the most successful within the DCEU, but it's also dominated the films around it that were released at Christmas or just before Christmas. Mary Poppins Returns did okay in America, but really struggled against Aquaman globally. It's the same as Bumblebee. Now, Hollywood are obsessed with female leads, and Aquaman defeated both of them. And I've said this so many times, it's getting boring. But it just interests me how you got this alpha male actor dominating these so-called female-led movies that apparently everybody wants. But here's the thing. People don't care who's leading the film, whether it's a man, woman or beast. They just want to be excited. You know, the DCEU's got many fans. You know, the DCEU has got a lot of people who take notice of it, whether they're people who love the franchise or don't like the franchise. So if you give them something that they might be interested in, aka Jason Momoa and Amber Heard, they wanted to go and see that. I don't know exactly what it was that got butts on seats for this film, but it happened. Sometimes it's difficult to analyse these things, and I think when Warner Brothers do analyse this, I think they're going to find it difficult to find the one ingredient that worked. It's sometimes with movies, you get that moment in time, and again, you have to look at where this film came from. This film is kind of part of the DCEU. The last DCEU film before Aquaman was Justice League. Justice League sacked one director in Zack Snyder, brought another one on to clean it up and just finish up his movie. Very similar to Bohemian Rhapsody, and actually Bohemian Rhapsody probably did better. It didn't beat Justice League's box office, but I think it had a more positive outcome than what Justice League did, which I find very interesting. But for Aquaman to be the next film after the disappointment, after the failure, you know, and all the negative chat from us, the fans, for James Wan and Walter Hamada to have to deal with that would have been very challenging. And you just got to respect them and congratulate them for being able to deal with that. Listen, as I say, I've tried to think about it. Momoa appeal, Heard appeal, the fact that James Wan has, you know, directed many popular movies as well would have helped. But ultimately, if the film wasn't very good, then people wouldn't be going back to watch it. A film like Aquaman only makes over $1 billion and beats The Dark Knight. If fans, die-hard fans, are going back across the world, watching it again and again and again, that's how it works. It's rewatchability levels, right? And the DCEU over the MCU has got more rewatchability to it. It has. I'm sorry, it has. In Man of Steel, in Batman v Superman, in Suicide Squad, people were going back and watching Suicide Squad as well, and Wonder Woman. So, and to a lesser extent, Justice League, even that wouldn't have made 653, I think. So, trying to be exact and concise, but I'm not a box office expert, and I'm not interested in graphs and pie charts and nonsense like that. Things like that bore me. I don't really want to break down the numbers. I just want to look at how and why this happened. Because in reality, in logic, you would have thought that Aquaman would have struggled because of Justice League. You know, they said Justice League struggled because of Batman v Superman. I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think Justice League struggled because test audiences had seen Justice League and really hadn't been impressed. Yeah, you heard a few of the test audiences being very positive, but you know, studios always do that. They're not going to plug up people's quotes who didn't like it. So very interesting what happened there. It happened, we move on. And Aquaman is a new beginning. It is a new beginning, and it really gives Shazam, which is a really, really good CBN, by the way, Shazam a great opportunity to be successful. Look, I think Shazam will be extremely successful because it doesn't really have a negative narrative surrounding it like Captain Marvel has. Now, Captain Marvel is definitely an okay, acceptable MCU movie in CBN. No question about that. But Captain Marvel has a lot of negativity around it. And there'll be people tactically not going to watch that film because, and I have to be honest here, there's Marvel fans, there's even some MCU fans who want Captain Marvel to fail. But why do they want Captain Marvel to fail? Well, I could talk about that in another film. But basically, they're worried if Captain Marvel's successful, then this will be the tone of the future of the MCU. But as I say, we can discuss that on another video. But basically, yeah, I think Shazam is going to be a great knocking effect. I think Shazam will. It's difficult for me to kind of pinpoint and work out if this film is going to be as successful as Aquaman. I would suspect it would be very difficult for Shazam to reach $1 billion, but who knows? But I definitely can see this film, taking 600 to 700. But then that's what I said about Aquaman, and I was totally wrong. So this could be the lifting up point for the DCEU. Quickly, Walter Hamada, get Jason Momoa to do a cameo scene. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting because kind of the knock-on from Aquaman to Shazam, will it have a positive effect? I suspect it will, because this is massive, because the DCEU has struggled to get to $1 billion. There's no question about that. It didn't happen with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, or even Wonder Woman, who's a top-tier character, as well as Batman and Superman. People say, oh, wow, a Superman movie not reaching $1 billion. Well, a Wonder Woman movie is not reaching $1 billion. It's just the biggest story. Now, that's not what the press was saying at the time. Oh, female-led movie, really successful. Isn't that great? It's great, but Wonder Woman should really be clearing over $1 billion, just like Superman should be and just like Batman should be. So when we say, oh, Superman didn't reach $1 billion, shock horror, Wonder Woman didn't reach $1 billion, shock horror, because she's just as massive as Batman v Superman. Anyway, what do you think about the success of Shazam? Are you excited? As fans, we have been through so much shit since Man of Steel from other fans. We've taken so much nonsense. Apparently, you're not a successful franchise until you've reached $1 billion. I tell you what, we're successful.